So I'm Kevin Nilson. This is, I guess, my third talk here at the conference, one of those being the Android conference. But anyway, this is a little bit about me. So I'm a developer advocate for Google. Most of my focus is on working on Chromecast. And I work with all kinds of partners, helping them make amazing apps. So I work with folks like HBO, Major League Baseball, who else have I worked with? Red Bull TV, I did a bunch with them. And then I work with a bunch of others that I can't mention because they haven't launched yet. They're recording in here. So myself, I'm probably most well known for running user groups. So I run the Silicon Valley JavaScript meetup. Run that with Michael Carter, who's like the WebSockets creator. Run the Silicon Valley Java user group. And I started the first Google developer group many years ago. And then I started a new thing recently because my son's like 9 years old now, starting to code. And so we do a DevOps for Kids Bay Area, so it teaches kids to program. And we'll do an event I think it's the 31st, up here in the city. So if any of you had kids or in the area or know somebody who has kids, feel free to ask me and I'll give you info for that. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, do a quick overview of Chromecast and then the Google Cast protocol, and then some general tips for coding for the television. And so that's hopefully something that's for everybody, even if you're not doing Chromecast, but you're doing Apple TV or Roku or Amazon Fire, whatever it is. It's just some general stuff that's good for everybody. And then we'll drill into some of the developer stuff for Chromecast, talk about the developer console, and then writing senders and receivers, so writing the code for Chromecast, and then talk about samples, how to debug, and some of the UX stuff that we've got there. So quick with a quick overview, and we'll try this movie. It's kind of fun if it...
Whoa. Showtime.
There's me! Boom.
You're welcome.
Very good. All right. Hopefully that gives everybody time to sneak in and wake up as well. There we are. So what is Chromecast? So Chromecast is a little HDMI dongle that fits into your television or anything that takes HDMI. It could be a projector, television, and you can think of it. If you're not familiar with what it is, you can think of it, something like a Blu-ray player, something that you'd plug into your television as an alternate input. And what's really cool about Chromecast, it's kind of unique and different about what the device does and a lot of its power is it's really driven as a second screen. So, your mobile device, your iPhone, your Android, or your browser is sort of the first screen, and then the television is a second screen. So it's a little bit different than, things that are mirrored or things like that. You can imagine a lot of interesting scenarios like, we're watching sports up here and doing replays on our phone, or all of you in the room are connected into the television, and you're all able to manage a playlist or something, or you're all able to play or change the song or whatever it is. So that's what's a little bit different. It's really great, real low power, and then it works with the CEC spec so that it'll automatically, for most televisions or receivers, it'll automatically, when you start to play something, it will switch, from your Comcast over to Chromecast. Really, really nice. People like it. It's cheap, $35. It's sort of a no-brainer for most households. It's the #1 bestseller on Amazon for a really, really long time. And that's, competing against things like Kindle and the Amazon Fire TV that are only sold on Amazon, I assume. So it's doing really, really well. Been there for as long as I can remember. So we talked about Chromecast being a little dongle and kind of a piece of hardware. And so now I'll talk about what is Google Cast. So Google Cast is the technology itself. So you can think of Chromecast as being just one of the possible hardware. It's the only one available today, but you can envision this being built into televisions. You can envision it being built into other set-top boxes, whatever it is. So building for Google Cast and working with the Cast SDK is actually what we do when we're coding for Chromecast. The Cast SDK or working with Google Cast contains two parts: a sender and a receiver, and the senders are something that can connect to a television and send media or interact with it, and the receiver is the HTML5 code that runs in the television. So it's a little bit of an advantage over other platforms, I would think, where you actually write HTML5 on the receiver, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and it's actually a Chrome browser that's running inside of the little dongle. So you can think of a single tab browser that runs there, and then things like video content is done with a video tag. You could use an audio tag. Most people use a video tag for audio, but same idea. So CSS, all that is fully supported because it is Chrome. And then the last kind of item, kind of definition there is something called casting, and that's when you're sending something to the screen. It could be media if it's a media app or whatever it is, but casting is the official term, and then we use the term flinging, which that makes me think of boogers, but that's the other term that I think is not used as often. So what is Google Cast? These are the senders, like I mentioned earlier. It is Chrome for the browser, which runs everywhere. Currently, it doesn't run in like Firefox or IE. Nobody's done an extension for that, and it works through a Chrome extension. And then there's a native SDK for Android and for iOS. And so, as I said, iOS is really a first-class citizen, just like all the others. And a lot of my focus has actually been in the iOS side. So, and then on the receiver, the code that actually runs on the television, like I said before, it's Chrome, and it supports HTML5 stack. So one of the really nice things about having that second screen experience is you have this really, really immersive experience in your phone. People are really into it. They really know how to use it. They're really familiar and comfortable with this. And then you have this great 10-foot experience, which you guys are experiencing here, that you can share with others. It's very comfortable. And Chromecast tries to bring the best of both of those together. Another thing that's really nice about it is there is no installation of software. So if you look back at other products, where you're installing, going to a store that's particular for the TV. Chromecast doesn't have that. So if you have an app in the Play Store or the App Store on your phone, and then just having a cast on the network, it's there. So it's very easy, no setup, no configuration, just the fact that you're already using apps on your phone makes all that possible. So how does it work? So here's kind of a little scenario with YouTube or some other streaming media, or your site in the cloud, and you're sitting there watching this particular video on your phone, and you're kind of enjoying it, you like it, and then you look up and you remember, oh my goodness, I have a really big TV there. I would much rather watch it at the 10-foot experience, kind of lean back, rather than what I have here on the small phone. You remember you've got the Chromecast plugged into the TV. You look down at your mobile device or at your browser, and you see the cast icon, and you go, oh, let me just click that. You click that, it communicates over to your television and sends it pretty much a URL to the video. So it lets it know what receiver app to load, and then what video. And then the next thing you know, your television is going directly to the cloud to get that content. So it's not eating up your battery of your phone, anything like that. And it's streaming now directly from the cloud into your television, and your phone is just sitting there idle, just like your remote is in your living room. So it's sitting there waiting to do commands, and then you could change the video, adjust the volume, whatever it is, and then in fact, you could actually leave the room. So you could leave the room, turn something on for your children, disappear, go somewhere else, and continue to play on the television, right? Or step outside for a minute, watch it on your phone while your family's still watching it in the living room. Things like that are very possible. So it's a really cool experience, and that's how it all works. So why cast enable your app, right? So Americans spend 5.5 hours in front of the television every single day on average. So there's a really great user base out there who's wanting this and wanting to be in front of the television, and hopefully it gives you the ability to make that experience better, right? And then what kind of things can be cast? So it's a really great opportunity now because a lot of the apps that are out there, so this is a search from Google Play, and over there's the apps that are featured. But if you look at the list, it's all media type apps. So Netflix and Hulu and Pandora and HBO and apps like this. But you can imagine all kinds of other apps, that can be done with this. Ordering from a restaurant, all of us, if we're going to go together in group order, things like that could very be possible. So there's a whole lot more that can be done out there, and I think now's the time to jump in, and it gives you the ability to get greater press and bring more things to the platform. So here's some tips for coding for the television. Don't just apply to Chromecast. So here's a real cool, amazing demo that has this block of HTML on it. Just says hello HTML5DevConf. And I took this photo here in my cube a few days ago, maybe Friday or so. And does anyone know what's going on here? Why do you have this or this just zoomed in? Does anyone know what the problem is? Anyone? The aspect ratio? Yeah, I'll kind of go with that. Nobody?
Scan line.
Somebody said overscan. There we go. I have someone who's done this before, I bet. Yeah. So due to unusual specs and misimplementations, and you think back to all the problems in the early days of the web, similar types of stuff in the television, where they pad things out on the sides, and then studios don't use that side. So text always has to be inset with some sort of a border or whatever it is, and these are things that the BBC suggest. Just pulled this off of Wikipedia, but it shows kind of that border. But this, going back, this is an exact example that I put together a few days ago to kind of show that. So don't be surprised, this is what you get. And the other thing is by default, instead of the background being white on Chromecast, it's black. So it's a black background with black text. So you kind of need to do some CSS magic there to make things happen. Another thing about the television that you don't think about often is, dialogues and things like that shouldn't be on the television. So a lot of times you're trying to reuse layouts or reuse various aspects that you already have in your website and try to throw that up. You have to be really, really careful with what happens there, and especially when you're working with second screen type apps. All that interactivity stuff should happen on the phone, right? Shouldn't happen on your television. So I've got a little 20-month-old about that size, maybe a little smaller, and I was going to take a photo with him on doing that, but I was afraid if I did that and kept trying to get him to take a photo that he would never stop touching my TV. So anyway. A little bit more on the the idea of these dialogues and things. You should think of the phone as a remote. So the things, they're very much the same but different. And the reason that they're different is imagine we're casting YouTube content. You should be looking at the phone when you're navigating, where you never look at a remote when you're flipping through channels. You look up at the television. Chromecast or second screen apps are different, where you should be using this real familiar interface, using this app that you're familiar with, know how to use, nothing changed about it, and just the fact that you switch the video, if you are connected to a cast device, it will change up on your television. So there's no learning curve. It's really great. So burn-in. This is one of the other really big things. This shows up really well in this. So this is probably plasma televisions. This is in one of the airports that actually shows how leaving text up on a screen for plasma especially is really bad. And does anyone have any guess on how long that takes to get burn-in? Any guesses? Our overscan expert, any guesses? Anyone? Huh? 30 seconds. Boy, that'd be really tough. Man, 30 seconds. So it's, you know, it depends on who you listen to, but 5 minutes is like my comfort level from like being able to leave up splash screens or whatever it is. You know, you think about idle screens, or if you pause your movie and leave it up, after 5 minutes, you need to kind of do something. Otherwise, the plasma TV owners are going to get really upset with you. So it's like old, like super old CRT monitors or something. So let's jump into Chromecast and talk about how to actually build an app there. What are the steps? What are the processes? What's some of the code making that happen? And so I want to start by talking about the receiver code. And the receiver code is a code that runs in the television, runs in the little dongle. It's a Chrome browser. It's HTML5. And the code, kind of the first step that you need to do is go into a developer console and register the URL. So when someone is in the app and they cast to cast enable, you know, your app, and they want to cast, they actually it's a URL from your web server that gets loaded on the television. So it's really kind of nice so that you're able to make changes and things like that without updating to an app store. Users don't have to download things, stuff like that. But it starts here with you know, a console. So it's really nice. You're in control. You can create your own app ID. Once you have an app ID, that's sort of a mapping into your app. One thing that's a little bit confusing there is you need to have one app ID per environment. So if you have test, stage, and production, you'll need 3 app IDs because they're probably going to point to different URLs. So I think the naming is a little bit confusing. You actually only have one app with 3 environments, but you'll need 3 app IDs. And then we currently we don't have any ACL, you know, access control stuff where you can grant admins and users and things like that. So just use one shared account within your company. This is very much recommended. So the first choice you have when creating a receiver is, do you want to do a custom receiver where you're writing all the JavaScript, the HTML yourself, or do you want to do a styled receiver? And so I'll talk about the styled receiver so you can see what that's all about. And the nice thing there is all you provide is a single CSS file that makes things look really nice. And this would be if you're doing a media application. You can style it and custom, and it looks like it's your own thing, but the code itself is already written. And there's even an option, you know, if you just want to throw something together really quick, you can use a default style that looks nice, but you don't have to actually even provide that. So here's an example of the styled receiver. A few CSS classes, the progress bar, the watermark, the splash screen, so that as you're going through the various transitions, you know, things are loading or things are paused, we're able to use your company's logo. We're able to make it look and feel like it's customized for you, even though there wasn't really any heavy lifting on your side. The next thing you can do is add devices into your app. And what the idea is that it gives you the ability to have your QA devices, your developer devices, where your app will run. And then it lets you do things like get your app fully distributed before you publish it to the world, which means you can put it in the Play Store, you can put it in the App Store, have everyone download it, get it on their devices, have it ready. You can test things on your production server using these whitelisted devices. It'll only run there. And then once you click the publish button, which I don't think I have a slide for, it basically, here you can see some of my apps are published and some are unpublished. So the unpublished ones only run for me and my team. The published ones run for everyone in the world. So it gives you that ability where you don't have this, I don't know how long it's going to take for the App Store CDN to propagate my app. It also gives you the ability to basically go in here and unpublish. Say your data center's overheating or something, and then what that means is the cast icon won't show up in people's browser and people's app. Yeah. So now let's talk about the receiver itself. And again, writing the code for the receiver. And I'll just go through some really, really basic examples. So what is it? Like I said, it's a Chrome browser that runs in the dongle or on the television, HTML5, JavaScript, CSS. And it supports the encrypted media extension, EME, just part of Chrome. Some of you are probably familiar with that. Media source extension stuff, does web audio APIs, and it all runs right there, really, really easy. And what that means is you can do things like Chrome remote debugging and all the things that you're kind of familiar with Chrome, you can do with Chromecast. Trying to make that as easy as possible. So like we talked about before, we talked about the styled receiver and custom receiver. There's actually another even simpler receiver, which is this default receiver, and you just use a constant that's in the library, and you'll get that. So you don't even have to do anything. If you just want to create a web page with the video in it and cast it up, you can just use that and get going really, really quickly. And then the last one, which we'll talk about here, is a custom receiver. So this is what every single partner who's launched, who's like got millions and millions of users and they have lots and lots of developers, this is what they do. So, and if you wanted to do things that were beyond just basic media, if you wanted to create a game or whatever it was that you wanted to do, you would do that with a custom receiver. So this is the most absolute basic custom receiver. It gives you a feel for what's there. You can add all kinds of other listeners and things like that. And there's a lot of APIs as well, but I'll walk through kind of this. You start by including one JS file that we host at Google, and that's gives you all the receiver functionality. And then in the body of your page, you'll have a media element. Here we've got a video tag, the ID of media. And that's kind of all you'll need in the body, basically. And then for the scripts, basically when the window loads or when the page loads up, you'll look for that media element, get a hold of it, and then you'll create a media manager and pass it that media element. And then from there, get an instance of the receiver manager, and then you can start that. And so that's all it really takes to get something up and going that will respond to devices or browsers casting to things. So this actually is a fully functional, does everything, right? Another thing I'll point out is some specific nice things that the receiver can do, which would be point-to-point messaging or broadcast messaging. So the senders, actual clients out there, can only send to the receiver. They can't send to other clients that are connected, but the receiver, the dongle itself, can broadcast out, right? And they do that with a message bus. So a message bus will let them send out to lots and lots of people, where a channel is more point-to-point, where you're sending that out to a single person. And then with the broadcast, you can use namespaces so that people can determine how they handle things, messages differently. Just a standard bus architecture, like you're familiar with, with other, ESB, all kinds of other areas use that. So some sort of examples of this. Imagine we were writing a poker app, and we wanted a multiplayer poker app. The face-up cards, I would use a message bus so that everyone can see those. But the face-down cards, where I want to communicate that one-on-one to a person, I would use cast channels to make that possible. So now let's talk about the sender. And this is the code that's going to run in your browser, runs in Chrome. And Most of the heavy lifting, or much of the heavy lifting, especially for Chrome, is actually done in a Chrome extension that all the users of Chromecast install. So that's already there, does a lot. And so it's fairly easy, I think, to write a Chrome sender. Runs in the Chrome desktop browser, has an extension, all the standard web technologies are used, and in your page, you just include this one JS file. So you get things started by checking, the window object for Chrome, Chromecast, and Chromecast is available. You check all these fields on the window object, and basically what this means is, does the user have the Chrome extension in their browser? So if they don't even have the Chrome extension, there's no possible way they can cast, because all that mechanism for the communications is done in the extension. And so this allows you, right up front, before you do anything, make sure that they have that Chrome extension installed. From there, you'll create a session request with your app ID. So this is where I talked about in the developer console, you registered an app ID that maps to a single URL. If you're doing a custom, if it's just styled, you don't really have a URL. And the idea is this app ID, whatever URL it's configured to, is what gets loaded. So this gives you the ability to swap that URL and things like that. So you take that session request and create an API config with it, with two listeners, a join listener and a receiver listener, and then you call initialize. So after you've done the initialization, you'll get the callback will be called, the receiver listener, and basically it tells you available or not. And what that means is are there devices on your network, right? Because Chromecast right now works only, devices that are connected to the same network as you. So the access control, the security is about, can someone get on your network? If they can get on your network, then they can cast your TV. So why this is important is if you want to show a cast icon in your app or not. So if there's no devices, don't show the cast icon. If there is devices, then you should show the cast icon. And then now, the next thing that you'd want to do, for example, when someone clicks that cast icon, so someone clicks the cast icon in your app and they actually want to request a session, they want to get connected, you'll make a request for a session. And then when you actually do that, what happens is, so you can see here they've clicked the cast icon, and then what happens is the Chrome extension, it does a pop-up HTML basically, shows the list of cast devices that are available. And so basically making that request, when you click the button, user clicks the button, request a session, and so it's asking which device to create a session on. So a lot of times people will have multiple of these in their household because they are so inexpensive. From there, now that you are connected, things are successful, you're up and running, one of the things that you'd like to do maybe is cast a piece of media. Be a video, an audio clip, an image, whatever it is. And so you'll start by creating, as a simple domain object, a media info object. You pass it a URL and its MIME type, and so that it knows how to handle the particular piece of media. And then there's also some metadata that you can pass along, and that metadata for things like video is what controls the splash screen. So earlier we showed the splash screen that showed, Big Buck Bunny is about to load. That information goes there as well. You can add the time, all kinds of information there. But for here, we'll create that domain object, the media info, and then we'll create a load request, which is kind of, it's not like play, but it kind of is. It's like load this up so that we can play it or not. And you load the media. One of the optional parameters is autoplay. So you can tell it to autoplay so that when it loads it, gets it ready, it'll start playing. I use that usually. Most folks do. And then disconnecting, you use the cast icon typically and then click the stop casting like you see here. So samples. There's a lot of great samples on GitHub. The most extensive is the cast videos. We've got samples in the web, Android and iOS. And the idea there was to build something that's like nearly as complex as an app you would build, right? So it has a lot of those features. It has a mini player. This is kind of what it looks like, where you do a selection, you can do local playback, you can do casting. While you're casting a particular video, you can navigate back to switch, and while you do, it shows the currently playing video. You click on that, it will take you into the video. So it has a lot of really great features there that hopefully, the idea is that hopefully you can get up and running really quickly by grabbing as much as you can from that and directly using it in your app. Then we've got another app, the Hello World, that's like what is the absolute least amount of code that is necessary to get a video playing on the TV or to get an image up on the TV. So that's kind of nice. And then the final example is Hello Text, which is more about custom messaging. So if you want to do something beyond a video app, if you want to add a voting mechanism while a video is playing, we could all watch the video and you all vote, or you guys could vote on my talk, maybe, whatever. Things like that, or doing games. This example shows you how to do custom channels, custom messages. It just sends JSON packets back and forth, but it shows how to do that and get that up and running. And I think looking at all of these, it helps you kind of get up and running. Like I said, this is our sample app. It's really great. Has all the features. And one thing that's nice and unique about it is all the apps behave a little bit different based on the functionality of their platform. So on Android, we've got really great lock screen stuff. Where on iOS, we don't really have that because you can't do as much with Notification Center, things like that. So they're all really customized and built well for the platform that they're on, and definitely take a look at those. So now I want to talk a little bit about debugging, and specifically, toward the web side of things, the Chrome senders or the receiver, kind of what's required to do that. The first thing is you can only debug on your development devices or on your QA devices, or basically devices that you whitelisted in the developer console. So it kind of prevents people from being able to look at your DRM or whatever it is. Tries to prevent a lot of that. And so what that means is in the Chromecast setup app, in the Chromecast app, you actually need to go in and check the box that says, go ahead and send my serial number along, as you're doing things. Because typically users are very anonymous in Chromecast. There's no identifying data about those users. I think that's really important to Google to do. But, if you want to debug, you need to tell, this is a device that I have authorized to debug my app. So the next piece is for the receiver. So if you want to debug the code that's actually in the television, you really need, it's really great using Chrome, so you can do remote debugging. So you can have a Chrome debugger on your desktop, and it's actually debugging the code that's on the television. So who else done Chrome remote debugging? Anybody? You guys did it for Android and iOS? Android? Yeah. Yeah. So it's really cool. It's the same mechanism. So if you haven't done that, it's absolutely awesome. So if you're having problems with your app running in Chrome or on Android, not rendering fast, or scroll performance is bad, whatever it is, whatever problem that you're having, some responsive, whatever's not working, if you basically get the IP address of that remote element, here we're talking about Chromecast, and then go to the debugging port 9222, that's the default, it just connects in, and you get a debugging session right there in your browser that is connected remote over to the Chromecast. So some of the tips and tricks here: click the preserve logs upon navigation. There's a little gear icon. Click that and enable that, so that if the Chromecast crashes, you don't lose all the great information about why it crashed. And then the last thing here that's really, really important is, if you think back to the simple receiver that we wrote, the very last line was to start that receiver. And when you do, there's an optional parameter of max inactivity. That's really important. And the reason it is can anyone guess why? Anyone have any ideas? Why, as a developer, you'd want to set the max inactivity? No. So actually what it is and think more about iOS and Android. Chrome I don't really know, but probably on Chrome as well. Basically, for an iOS device for sure, when you put a breakpoint in, iOS is very single-threaded in nature. So if you put a breakpoint in your code, there's a background thread that's like doing a heartbeat to make sure that the device is still connected, and it will time out and disconnect you and shut everything down. And so what happens is, by being on a breakpoint for more than 5 seconds, would cause your app to disconnect and everything shut down and start local playback back on your phone. And so that's really, really annoying. So typically you want to leave it alone in production, but then for development, or your stage server, test server, whatever, set this parameter that allows that heartbeat to happen. Well, it happens at the same interval, but it ignores a lot longer, so that you can debug. And then it's got all the, there's a logger. You can set the level to log level debug. And then the next thing is the dongle tends to cache. And so, you can't F5 or whatever to clear that, or right click and do whatever you do typically. But in the console you can do window location reload and passing a true to tell it to clear the cache. But I'll be honest with you, the way I do it is I've got my setup all set up with the power, like the big USB part is like right here on my monitor. And so I power cycle it because it's actually faster to power cycle the Chromecast because it comes up so quick than it is to reload the window. So, because when you do this, it's a little bit, it's not like slow, but it's some 5 or 10 seconds. So there's a bit of setup to do that. So I power cycle quite a bit when I do Chromecast development for the receiver. Console log, debugger statements. You can put debugger statements in there. If a debugger's attached, it'll break right on it. So is everybody aware of debugger statements? They're really awesome. It's like a breakpoint, but you just type it in the code. So if you just type the word debugger, it'll pause right there, which is really nice. So for the sender, the code of actually, that runs in the sender, same idea. It's all standard Chrome, so you can do that with a debugger. And then finally, let's talk a little bit about the design checklist, kind of what that's all about. So one thing I'll give you just sort of tips and tricks about development in general, right? So especially when working with Google or others, is you should treat the design guideline like a Bible or something. Don't treat it like I treat a Bible, because I ignore that. But you should really, really take it seriously, and you have no idea how important that is to getting featured, right? Because when you put apps out there, you want them to be featured by Apple. You want them to featured, in the Play Store, in the App Store, wherever it is. And so this is super, super critical to making that happen. So at Apple, they even review apps, and apps that don't abide by their design guideline, they reject them and say, we're not even going to let you put it on the platform. On Android, in the Play Store, we actually don't do that, but we feel just as strongly about it. And, we let users, we think that apps that don't follow the guideline won't get high ratings and things like that, but they definitely won't get featured. So just a tip and trick, treat this to a T. If you're building an Android app, treat it just as serious as you would with an Apple, and if you have a great app that's getting lots of traction, ask folks at Google, hey, do you mind to take a look and go through my app, right? So I do that for a lot of different partners. So here's some examples of the UX guideline, and it's actually a really cool place to start like when you first jump into Chromecast, you can kind of look in there and it has text that explains all the different modes. So here it's talking about the cast icon state, whether you're connected or connecting, and this is one of the cool things where you can actually style it to fit your app. I don't know if that yellow fits this app, but it doesn't have to be like a bolded type of a look or strong. But this is some examples. Here's another example. But if you're not familiar with Chromecast and you're just kind of jumping in, it's kind of nice to read through this, and you can see all the scenarios, all the various code that you'll have to write. And this kind of talks about how to do that. And what's really nice is, since the sample app is fully UX compliant, if you take as much code from that as you possibly can, it gets you in a state where that you match all this so that your apps can be featured by Google. Some useful links, kind of wrapping things up here. There's a documentation. The samples are out there on GitHub, so feel free to fork them. We take all kinds of pull requests and everything else a lot, especially on the Android app for some reason. Lots of people are really passionate about contributing to that. I wrote most of the iOS apps that are out there. The developer portal, that's a link to that. And then the design checklist. And finally, we've got a Google Plus developer community. So you can go in, share, ask questions, tell people cool stuff that you're doing. It's kind of a nice, there's actually a ton of, like, when people see bugs, they post it there. Lots of people, oh yeah, I see the same thing. And it's a great place to get your voice heard really quickly. So how do you get started? How do you leave this room, jump out there, and kind of jump into things? Visit the website, developer.google.com/cast. We've got some workflows, and I think the workflows kind of talk a lot, kind of give you a nice big picture overview. Hopefully this is giving you a bit of that, but something you can go back to your office and others can look at. Download the sample apps. That's a really great way. It's got all the code. They're fairly simple, written fairly well. You can look at those, at what features you'll need to add. You can look at the Hello World ones just to get started, get some early success, get some of your media up on the television. From there, run those sample apps, make modifications, and then you're kind of up and running, going through the design guidelines. So this is a pretty nice way. And with that, I'll thank everybody for coming out at 9 a.m. bright and early, and enjoy the show. And with that, any questions from anybody? Yeah.
So 2 questions.
Yep.
What's the bounding, what's the limitation with the delay? Because I've noticed there's a delay between Chromecasting and what's on the screen. And then the second question is, can you multicast to multiple Chromecasts at the same time?
Yeah, good question. So the delay is significantly improving. So one of the things that I can kind of talk about, it's a bit beyond the scope, right? But we came out with a developer preview that used a whole lot of different technology than when we actually released. So most of the apps that you use today, like about half or more of them, are using the old stack, right? So we used to use things like a dial protocol. Now we do some cast stuff. There's a lot of improvements in there. And a lot of the things that we're shooting towards, performance is very, very critical. But I will say, from experience working with partners on this exact issue, often a lot of the problem is around DRM. So if you're talking about protected content, a lot of times their DRM servers are so freaking slow, to get Netflix up or whatever. A lot of times the DRM piece, authenticating your Chromecast, is the part that's slow. Once you're connected, switching videos, things like that tends to be fast.
What if you have like an HTML5 app that just you want to present up there?
Then you don't have DRM problems, right? Yeah, so those are fairly quick, but definitely the newer, like if you do the stuff I talk about today, then things are much faster than they used to be. Definitely improvements.
And then multicasting?
Yeah, so multicasting is not something today that's like well supported, right? There are folks doing that types of stuff, Sonus and folks doing that. But I would say out of the box, you're going to do a lot of heavy lifting to make that happen. Yeah. Yeah. More questions? Yeah.
What about most of the device itself? There are some limitations about the number of videos and canvas.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So one media element, one video stream per page. So you can't be playing 2 videos at once, which I'm not sure is that limiting of a thing. But the things like CSS performance can be really, really bad. So if you try to do a Ken Burns effect or something like that, the RAM inside of the dongle is so small, it can be really, really choppy. But there are huge, like, exponential improvements coming. I don't know when they'll come, but it's always easy to predict that Google I/O is 5 weeks from now, and if you're good at predicting things, that's a great time for big announcements to come about huge performance improvements. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have a question for from a user perspective.
Yeah.
In the sense that, is there ever going to be a 30-second rewind feature added?
So that's up to the app itself, right? So 30-second rewind, I can add it to any app in 5 seconds. I don't know. There's nothing hard about doing that. Yeah, it's a load command, and you pass the position to do that. It's very, very easy. It's just the app itself. Did they want to do that? We don't require people to add a 30-second rewind. I get very upset when they don't have it, because it's so, like what do you say, and then you're trying to scrub. I guess I can't name out some of the ones that are really bad at that. I mean, bad for me, but some of the apps are really bad at that. So we give them that feedback. I think you should give them that feedback as well. But it's super easy. It's up to you as a developer what you support. Yeah.
Your example receiver code use the video tag.
Yep.
But can that be something other than a media tag, and you can just have some HTML in there and control that as well?
You can do whatever you want. So one of the early code labs that we did internally at Google, and I'm talking way back, almost a year ago, we built a Pac-Man app. And they did it in half a day or whatever. Guy who wrote the receiver. You wrote a Pac-Man app, you can do full.
Canvas
So does it use Canvas? You can use Canvas. I don't remember if it used Canvas or not, honestly. I don't remember, but you can put divs on the screen. It's just having them move is not always a great thing. So one of the limitations, we talked about having multiple sort of video elements on the screen as being a limitation. So for Pac-Man, you have this multiple audio elements. You have that music in the background, and then you have the chomping. And so to solve that problem, one of the things that they threw together really quick is they muxed together all possible audio combinations of the background music with getting eaten, the background music with chomping a thing, and they were able to just flip that audio stream really, really quickly, and the app looks really nice. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
There's a product called Inyo from LG, which also targets the television market. It's kind of
Yeah.
framework.
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering if you're working on any integration, any guidelines for integration with that. Is that a non-feasible startup ideas or ways that you would suggest approaching that? I know it may have overhead for running as a receiver, but it may also run as a assistant.
Yeah, I would say the answer, Chromecast is one piece of hardware that does things. It's the only one available today, but in the future you can imagine it being built into things like an LG television. Be very possible. So I would think that Google will get really good distribution to where a cast-enabled app would run out of the box on a lot of hardware, would be my prediction. But actually, interoperability with other systems is not something that we're targeting to work with, other things at the time. Samsung has one, you know, lots of people do. Yeah. Any other questions? Anyone else? Yeah.
Do you have a Cordova plugin for hybrid?
So, not today. I'll say that. I guess that's all I can say. But there definitely is something that's been heard from the community very much. And it's not just Cordova, but it's getting a C implementation out there that enables things like Cordova, you know, PhoneGap, whoever it is. And then you think to other things, you know, Windows Mobile, things like that. There's a lot of things that could be enabled with the C library, and I think that's what people are really asking for. It's not supported today, but I think that feedback has been heard very, very much, and hopefully one of these days that'll be available. Yeah. Other questions? No. So it would be very easy to write a shim layer into the native. I mean, the APIs. So I would say when you think about Chromecast, the APIs are very simple and very small. There's not that much. A lot of the kind of, I don't know, the work or the difficulty is around bringing the second screen experience in. So you don't want it to feel, you know, you want it to feel like it's, wow, you're really empowered with the second screen. Things like having multiple users connect in and control the same video. So imagine I start a video here and you go in and change it to something else, and then making sure that my screen updates with knowing that what's now playing. A lot of that second screen stuff is really the heavy lifting. APIs are very, very small. It's a small set of APIs. Yeah. Any more questions? No. Very good. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah. And enjoy your time in San Francisco and the rest of the conference.